Now, the opposition leader Kemi Badenoch has vowed to bring back the two-child benefit cap to increase defence spending.
And the Conservative leader says she would take £1.6 billion from the savings to fund the recruitment of more soldiers.
Well, we're joined now by Kemi Badenoch. Good morning, Mrs Badenoch. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Now, I think most of our viewers would accept after this week that we are not spending anywhere near enough on defence in this country. We've seen, quite embarrassingly, how few assets we have in the region. But I suppose my question would be, is £1.6 billion enough? Is that a big enough boost? And why would you take it from this particular benefit, which is quite a small amount of money, compared from the enormous amount of other welfare spending that we're seeing increased?
So you're right, 1.6 billion is not the whole amount. You'll remember in December we announced a sovereign defence fund that would get up to £50 billion worth of spending. This is yet another new down payment to get us to 3%, which we need to get to by the end of this Parliament, not in the next Parliament as after the next general election, as the government is planning right now. And what we're doing is the hard work to find the savings. We want to put this welfare into defence. Reform, we're talking about putting it into pubs so that they can make beer cheaper. I don't think that is serious at all. But finding the right savings is part of the work of getting the money. The government right now has not even put out its defence investment plan. Should have done that last year. There's only one party doing the serious work to fund our defence, and it's Conservatives.
But I suppose you have accused Nigel Farage and Reform of being populist. Certainly offering to fund pubs sound like a populist move. But isn't this equally populist? Because the two-child benefit cap is popular with your voters, and yet it's a tiny amount of money. If we look at, for example, the number of pensioners who earn so much money that they pay higher rate tax, by 2028, that'll be £35 billion of benefits going to people who are some of the wealthiest in our country. Wouldn't it make more sense to tackle the booming pension bill and this tiny pot of money that's supporting families?
Well, the two-child benefit cap should never have been lifted. This is a policy that means that people who are on benefits don't have to make the same choices on having children as people who are off benefits. That is not fair. We had it in place as a Conservative government. You certainly were in the party at the time, Miriam. You remember the arguments for this.
I vocally opposed that policy all the way through. I'm sure you remember.
We need to do the right thing, not just the fun thing or the thing that's going to get a newspaper headline. Right now, there is an escalating war. We are in it, whether we like it or not. The idea that we should not be taking defence seriously, for me, is the completely wrong one. You make a point about looking at other bits of welfare. This is where we're starting from. We've got to start somewhere. At the moment, no one else is even talking about taking tough decisions, but we are. Today, I'm standing, at a defence facility. I'm looking at the new Boxer armoured defence vehicle. Nobody else is even doing this sort of work. No one is thinking about the long term, about defending our country, except Conservatives, and we're going to take those tough decisions.
Well, Kemi, you are standing in front of a Boxer vehicle ordered under the last government. It's facing a lot of delays at the moment. Military procurement has been in a mess for several years, not just in the last 2 years. We've only got 6 of those destroyers that we want for air defence. One of them can't even get out of the port right now in time to go and support Cyprus. How much blame do the Conservatives have in that situation, that we are so woefully prepared for this conflict erupting in the Middle East?
Well, defence spending went down from 1989 until 2022. That's all the governments, Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, because we felt we were living in an era of peace. That's what happened. A lot of the defence money went into welfare. I want us to start changing that ratio. Certainly, when I got into Cabinet, 2022 onwards, we were spending more on defence. So I'm really pleased that when I was there, we were spending more. We need to spend even more. We need to get to 3%. We cannot rely on the US to do our defending for us, especially at a time when we've got a government that is not even helping them out by allowing them to use their our air bases until we've been attacked. It's not serious. So we can look back at a lot of things that went on in the past, those were different times. Those were different times. Different decisions were made. I'm a new leader of the Conservative Party today, and I am talking about what we need to do today and tomorrow and think about the future. That's why I'm here, because they have explained that there's a lot of messiness with defence procurement, even some things which we procured. James Cartlidge, Shadow Defence Secretary, was the procurement minister. He said there were some things which he signed off. Labour paused those things so they could carry out a strategic defence review. Done. Where is the plan to pay for them? Not done. They're not spending the money. And I want people to understand that I'm taking this very seriously. We cannot send soldiers to other countries when they're not properly equipped, when there are not enough of them. So my announcement today is about getting more soldiers, 6,000 regulars, 14,000 reserves, make sure that they're properly equipped, allow them to carry out rotations. We are, straining them. And you're right to point out that things do look very strained. I think it is a disgrace that HMS Dragon is still in Portsmouth. But that is because we have a government that came in to do more welfare and breakfast clubs. They were not prepared for the international situation that we have today, and they are running away from it. They need to get a grip.
Ms. Badenoch, if you think that you don't want soldiers to be deployed if they're not prepared, and you think we're in a dreadful situation, why are you urging the British military to take strikes on Iran? It would be a significant escalatory step if you don't think we're prepared. Isn't that a gung-ho statement that risks the lives of our personnel and their families and all the assets that we have in the region?
I haven't said that we're not prepared to do certain things in Iran. I'm saying we're not prepared for 3% on defense spending and an escalation, especially if countries like Russia and China are more aggressive. That's what I'm talking about. We should be able today to deal with some of the things that are happening in Iran. And the way I describe it is that right now we're only taking defensive action. We're stopping the missiles that are attacking our bases where we can and the drones. But we're not stopping the missile launch capability. We are catching arrows instead of stopping the archer. And if all you're doing is trying to catch the arrows, eventually you will get hit. You need to take out the missile launch capability. I'm not talking about us putting troops on the ground. I'm not talking about us, being gung-ho. This is not the same as the Iraq war. Iraq was not firing at British bases when that war started. This is a completely different situation. We have got to be serious. If we are looking like we will not do the right thing when we are under attack, do you think Russia is going to believe us when we talk about a coalition of the willing? I don't think so. They're not going to take us seriously. We are a serious country. We need to start acting like it. Keir Starmer needs to get a grip and stop looking so scared, stop being afraid of his backbenchers because they're worried about what the voters in places like Gorton and other places might think. They're worried about losing their seats. That's the thing that frightens me. They need to take decisions in the national interest, not just for the Labour Party's interest.
Kemi, just one last question. Yes or no, do you want to see the Royal Navy escorting tankers in the Strait of Hormuz to defend maritime shipping?
I want to see British interests defended. If that is what is required, then yes, but we need to make sure that we are ready, that we have that capability. The fact that HMS Dragon is in Portsmouth now leads me to worry about what else is going on that we might not know. And these are things that Labour can fix right now. This is not anything to do with previous governments. They use that excuse all the time. The fact is, if we were in charge now, we would be doing a lot more.
Kemi Badenoch, Conservative leader, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
This is your opportunity to take advantage of ExpressVPN and their best deal ever. Get a premium VPN with enhanced privacy, security and identity protection. By supporting ExpressVPN, you're supporting us here at GBNews. And on premium and advanced plans, you get a dedicated zero-knowledge password manager app, and coming soon, the world's first consumer AI platform built on confidential computing. This video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, couldn't be easier to use. Just click the link, download the app, connect, and you're protected. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to save up to 82% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 extra months free.
Right, well, let's cross over now to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, for some reaction to that. Mark, just very quickly, that last point we heard from Kemi, she said if that's what is required, then the Royal Navy should be deploying to support commercial assets. Can we do that? Obviously not.
No. Listen, we can't even get HMS Dragon there in a timely fashion to provide air defence for RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. In terms of actually getting into the Gulf, we've spoken a lot about our destroyer fleet. If we look at the frigate fleet, it's just absolutely decimated. We're supposed to have 13 frigates. These are the sort of anti-submarine hunters. They are also very well suited to the task of escorting shipping in times of crisis like this. However, we're down to 7, and most of them are actually in maintenance. There's about 3 that you could consider to be sort of active and available at the moment. But of course, many of them are getting ready to be part of this task group that's heading to the high north. So actually deploying our sort of combatants, our frigates and destroyers to escort shipping is just not feasible at this time, which is a woeful state to be in. It really is indicative of the way, as Kemi Badenoch was saying there, successive governments have just hollowed out defence spending because they have seen it as politically expedient to invest in the likes of welfare and the health service and all the time the capabilities of this country to defend itself and to project power have just been slowly but surely diminished. So we see what we are, faced with now, which is just a few combatants available.
Absolutely. And we look at the kind of amounts of money involved. I think the annual defence budget is 62 billion. The welfare budget's 400 billion. We spend 100 billion pounds a year on debt interest. And I think Mrs. Badenoch said that we shouldn't be announcing policy decisions to get headlines, but it seems to me this is absolutely about getting headlines because people don't like the scrapping of the child benefit cut. It's a tiny amount of money, but she knows what will get a headline. Is that actually a serious policy?
Well, listen, in terms of where we are at the moment in defence spending terms anyway, we've had successive sort of speeches by Keir Starmer and others from the current government talking about how we are in a completely changed environment in terms of the threats we face around the world and how we need now to invest much more. And this government is investing much more in defence. Yet those spending commitments, the first of them, to take us from about 2% to 2.3% up to 2.6%, isn't even going to start until next year, 2027. And then the further commitment to get up to about 3 and 3.5%, well, that's a lofty ambition for whoever might be next in government. There's absolutely no guarantee that the current government is still going to be in place to put through those defence commitments. So listening to Kemi Badenoch there, though, she would be willing to take on those extra defence commitments. And it's not just about a headline. Those in the military circles would certainly be hoping anyway.
Well, lots of people in the military circles, I'm sure, Mark, who were listening to Kemi Badenoch are thinking, well, where was that Conservative voice 15 years ago when we saw brigadiers resigning on principle because of the drastic cuts to the armed forces? I think it's a bit rich, isn't it, for Kemi Badenoch to talk about the armed forces being hollowed out when it's a consequence of Conservative decisions taken to take a risk, frankly, to reduce the orders, to delay procurement. We haven't got a proper replacement for infantry fighting vehicles. She's standing in front of the Boxer vehicle there. That's going to take years to come into action. I think it's very brave for any Conservative leader to be talking up their procurement legacy over the last 15 years. The Conservatives have a big role to play here in the state.
You're 100% right. They cannot escape criticism here, especially under the Cameron government in 2010, when we got those years of austerity and defence really got absolutely hammered first with the fact that, our aircraft carriers, such as they were, the Invincible class sort of pocket carriers, were taken out of commission as actual aircraft carriers. Our Harrier jump jets that were, our forward strike capability then from those carriers. They were taken out of commission, sold off to the United States, and we had like a 10-year gap before the Elizabeth class supercarriers came on, but even those, we don't have enough aircraft really to properly man them.
We do have some breaking news actually that we can bring you now, Mark. The Washington Post is reporting that Russia is providing Iran intelligence to target US forces. We've been told that by officials. Are you surprised at that, Mark?
No, not at all. No, they're a key ally. In the same way that Iran has been providing Russia with the Shahed drones, thousands upon thousands of them. Russia now actually manufacturing their own drones to Iranian designs. But, Iran has been part and parcel of the conflict in Ukraine, as has North Korea. Their key allies absolutely would expect nothing else than the Russians providing key intelligence. But it will up the ante. I'm sure President Trump will not be in the slightest bit happy to hear that news. Let's see what his reaction is to Vladimir Putin.
And also, Mark, this doesn't just expand the risk to coalition forces in the region, in particular the US forces. It also expands the number of countries now being drawn into this conflict. We saw a drone striking a civilian airport in Azerbaijan. We saw Turkey shooting down a ballistic missile approaching its airspace, a NATO member shooting down a missile. That's quite something, isn't it? So this conflict is expanding quite rapidly now, way beyond the Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah, and to that point, Hezbollah, the sort of proxy group for Iran in southern Lebanon, has just said that they are going to significantly expand their offensive operations against the Israelis. And to that point, potentially Cyprus RAF Akrotiri there, because it's widely believed that the drones that were fired towards Akrotiri had come from southern Lebanon rather than all the way from Iran. So, yes, some real concerns there about a widening conflict. Why? Which is why sort of, there are many within military circles that would say whatever the issues around whether the US and Israel should have gone into this conflict in the first place. We are where we are. We've passed that point now. Our sovereign air bases, our citizens and our allies are being attacked. Is it time now just to get in there and finish the job as quickly as possible so it doesn't engulf the whole of the Middle East as it looks like it is currently doing so.
And on those bases in the Middle East, obviously we've got a lot of assets there, so have the US and our allies. If we don't defend them sufficiently, do you think those countries will start to question whether or not it's in their interest to have our bases stationed there?
Well, we heard from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates ambassador to the UK earlier, really, in diplomatic terms, I think lobbing a real hand grenade in to the British government. Yeah, no, absolutely. Luckily, Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello were able to duck away from the flak from that. But honestly, that, saying effectively that the UK needs to do more, that as an ally, they would do more, the UK needs to do more. Sending another 4 Typhoons off to Qatar, it's something, but it really isn't enough in the greater scheme of things. There are multiple countries, 10 countries, that have been hit now in that region by Iran that are all under threat, and pretty much all of them allies, key allies of the United Kingdom.
Mark, I don't want to call the Prime Minister a liar, but yesterday in a press conference, he said, we have done and are doing everything we can to defend our people and respond to this crisis. Now, we understand that HMS Dragon and another destroyer were set for other roles, and that this option to redeploy them to the Eastern Mediterranean was provided and not taken. When the Prime Minister says we've done everything we can, is that true?
Well, without calling him a liar, just look at the actions that are now taking place, where we are scrambling that air defence destroyer to go down. If they'd done everything they could, then why are we getting extra assets, including the 4 additional Typhoons down there? Clearly, they didn't do everything they could. And we know that there were, from the Royal Navy, plans in place to allow for a deployment into the Eastern Mediterranean, into the Gulf region, but the government decided that the priority clearly was that there should be the deployment to the high north to deal with the threat from Russia. But these were not combative operations in the high north. These were exercises to show face, to show support. This is a real-time war that's taking place in the Middle East, where our allies and our sovereign bases absolutely require our offensive capabilities as much as we can effectively get there.